Old Dominion Freight Line.
A rising tide of Democrats ditching some of the president's policies ahead of the midterms. Mississippi's Gene Taylor becoming the first House Democrat to join 171 of his GOP colleagues calling for repeal of health care reform.
That news coming on the heels of a joint letter from 31 Democratic House members calling for the extension of all Bush tax cuts, despite fierce opposition from the White House.
Can the president expect further policy defections from his own party? Joining us now for a fair and balanced debate is Congressman Bilbray, Republican of California, and Texas Democratic Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Great to see you both. Congresswoman, first to you, if I may, are you doing anything personally to try to pull back some of those 31 Democrats who've gone over to the other side?
We do what we always do, which is recognize that the Democratic Party, the Democratic caucus, is a big tent. And we have been able to stand against the tide of a big tent, meaning that we've been successful. We've been successful in passing the health care bill, the Wall Street reform bill. We've been successful on assisting the executive, the president, in bringing down the numbers of troops overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq, but particularly in Iraq, and knowing that Afghanistan will be sometime in 2011. So we understand differences of opinion. We don't have any problem with that. We've been successful in spite of it. We encourage our members to be reflective of their districts, and we welcome that debate. I believe that tax cuts should be for the middle class and not for the richest of Americans, not for the increasing of the deficit, but providing the opportunity for the middle class and small businesses to invest back in America and grow jobs. That's the policy, and that's what most Americans agree with.
Congressman Bilbray, John Boehner, a Republican, had come out and said maybe that he would consider some type of compromise if that's all they could get. Where do you stand on this issue?
Well, as I stand with leaving as much of the Americans' hard-earned money in their own pocket where it belongs. The fact is only in Washington can you sit there and say that if you let people keep their own money, you're giving them something. The fact is, you're doing nothing but give them a break from the taxing that we've seen traditionally not be very successful. So I think Leader Boehner is trying to say, let's do as much as we can to make sure that Americans are able to keep those hard-earned dollars that they've earned themselves, that the government hasn't given them, and give them a chance to be able to stimulate the economy through the private sector, which has always been the foundation of our free republic.
Congresswoman, we've talked to a lot of small business people that make less than $1 million a year. They're not millionaires. They make between $250,000 and, say, $500,000. They say they're going to be hit hard if the tax rate does go up for the so-called rich. They don't consider themselves to be rich. They plow all of their earnings right back into their companies, their non-incorporated companies. What do you tell them?
We don't consider them rich as well, and frankly what we tell them is that we applaud them, we celebrate them, and we are working with them. First of all, individuals who have more of an income in their small business will at least minimally get $250,000. Those under that amount will have a tax cut. Then the president has already signed 8 small business tax cuts already, and we expect next week, as the Republicans in the Senate have stopped blocking the small business lending and tax cut bill, we'll have the wonderful benefit of signing, the president will, of signing the small business tax lending bill that will provide more tax cut and more access to credit. We know that small businesses create jobs. We're standing with them, but the minority leader simply wants to give to the richest of Americans, who, by the way, are holding their money. Most of the corporations are holding their money. They're not investing and providing jobs, but I can assure you small businesses are right in the midst of our concern, and we're going to get that bill passed. The president will sign it, and they'll get 8 more tax cuts and more money to access to build their business.
Congressman Bilbray, as we give you the last word, everybody loves a tax cut. Nobody likes a tax hike, but how do you pay for it? We have to start paying for these things.
Well, first of all, we're not talking about tax cuts. We're talking about not having tax increases at a time that it's essential that the small businesses that create 60% of the jobs aren't hit with a tax increase at a critical time. And the fact is, how we pay for it is the way we did it in the 90s. We're brave enough to say Washington spends too much. There's not an income problem in Washington, there's a spending problem. And just like families across this country are learning to live within a budget, it's about time Washington realizes that we have a responsibility in Washington to do the same. And
tax
frankly,
cut for,
that is a critical component.
Tax cut for the
We
rich.
started with
It's
Sheila
big spending.
Jackson Lee.
Tax
We
cut
end
for
with
the rich.
Congressman
It's big
Bilbray.
spending.
Good to have you both in. Congressman Brian Bilbray, Sheila Jackson Lee. Great to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so
for
much.
having us.
And we always hope they'll continue talking after the cameras are off.
I know. We'd like to have the big shot. Next time, we're going to make sure we have them both in the range because they like to kibitz with each other.
We like that.